Hey guys, Rex here. We're finally getting to take a look at this. This is the Primary Arms SLX 3-Power MicroPrism. Now, I've had this thing in for review and testing for quite a while. You guys know that I like to be very thorough before I start giving my opinions on these things. I probably could have squeaked out a review even 6 months ago, but really wanted to use it for a decent amount of time. Also waiting for them to get a decent supply in to where you could actually make an order once you saw how this thing performs. I really like this. I'm actually considering replacing all of the Trijicon TA31s I have on my different setups with this little guy here. I'll kind of share with you the feature set and what we're looking at, how it performed, and you'll get an idea as to why that might be. So again, this is the Primary Arms, the SLX series, their silver series. That means it's pretty affordable. It's like right around that $300 price range. And a MicroPrism, by nature, is extremely tiny, but also extremely rugged. A very tough little optic. You can't really get much tougher than this. And it has an illuminated ACSS Raptor reticle. This reticle I have on mine, putting it on my Colt M4 carbine. It's a 5.56 ACSS reticle. You guys are pretty familiar with this. I can go over the reticle features real quick. Basically, you have a chevron as a center aiming point, so you can actually establish a real decent zero. Even at 100 yards with 3 power, I was able to take my old M855 stash that I got out of a barrel that is just old, nasty, dirty M855 ammo, and at 100 yards I was able to get a decent size grouping out of it, like I would with any other optic. If I had a higher power magnification, I don't think I would have got much better performance, and I was able to get a nice fine zero after I tuned it in. Just had to pull a little bit to the left after a bore sighting it. It does have quarter minute of angle adjustments and a very low profile, like zero snag turrets. They are exposed, but they are not protruding out. They actually are molded into the body. Very streamlined. It's been dehorned as much as humanly possible. It's not going to snag on anything. That's what makes it so nice, is you really get that compact portability. A lot of times a scope is something that when you attach to your rifle is somewhat cumbersome, but this thing does not have that problem. It's one of the reasons I did like the Trijicon TA31s for so many years, is they're pretty streamlined. They're there's optics that give you better optical quality and a little more flexibility and things like that. But if you're looking for something that's like low profile, it's hard to beat a prism. And this new MicroPrism is a whole nother step down in size from even a TA31. It's just so much smaller. And it has 3 power magnification, a lot of the same performance you're going to have. It actually has more forgiving eye relief than does my TA31 as well. And I've run the ACSS Raptor TA31 on my M4 for a long time as well. And it's a great optic, but it is kind of fussy with its eye box. With eye relief, you have to be kind of exactly right behind it. You have to be pretty tight up on that optic to be able to use it. This one is a lot more forgiving. Even if you can't get that ideal eye relief, you still have a good view of the target through the optic, and it still functions very well. You can still get a line behind there and take your shots. So I'll talk a little bit about the features. Being an illuminated reticle, it's red illumination. You have the horseshoe and the chevron are very visible when you crank up the illumination. It does run on a CR2032 battery, and it does have a shake awake type feature, which means when you set it down and are not using it, it actually kind of goes to sleep. They call it their AutoLive. It has 13 different illumination settings, and their AutoLive motion sensing on-off technology, and it is also compatible with night vision, but that thing will make it go to sleep. Now, I ran this thing all winter because I go out 2 to 3 times a day with my rifle. With this particular carbine, it's always with me. I take it with me everywhere I go. So it's going through 2 or 3 freeze cycles per day during the winter. So it's been arguably over 150 freeze thaw cycles. And I'm talking hard freezes, like when it's below zero. Very common weather up here where I'm at. It actually gets very cold here. And this battery never ever had an issue. In fact, I left the battery that came with it in that optic, and I've never even put a fresh battery in it yet. And even still now, at the time of this review, bouncing around on the roads, using it all the time, because you're going to get some extra battery drain there as well, being that it does have that AutoLive motion sensing. Is when you're driving, that thing is turned on because it's bouncing around, and it has a lot of battery life. And the cold and the heat cycles sometimes can really stress those things and see if they perform. But what I'm looking for is maximum reliability in this particular carbine. Even if the battery was to go out, I still have that etched reticle. You're going to have a nice clear black horseshoe with the chevron in the middle. And then when you look at the ladder of the ACSS reticle, you have your auto ranging and your drop data out to 600, which is pretty much the max effective range of your carbine with most ammunition. So, man, this thing will get all the performance you can get out of the 5.56 cartridge. Of course, there are pluses and minuses to having a fixed power, but the 3 power magnification kind of dips into that lower end to where you can still use it for CQB. You can do the bend and aiming concept. You can, and with training, you can overcome any kind of handicaps that might come inherent for CQB applications if you are going to use it somewhat for that. That's all overcome by training if you are running something like a 3-power optic. But it does give you something that you can't really do without when you're talking about medium distances. You can see a lot better at 3-power magnification when you're talking about identifying targets, when you get out to 100 yards and beyond. A little bit of magnification even helps a lot, and being able to hold small and miss small on various targets all the way out to the max effective range. The 3-power does get you into there as well. So if you're to draw this out on a Venn diagram, you're going to dip into that CQB potential, and you're going to go out all the way to the max effective range of that cartridge for point targets. It does have 80 minutes of angle of total elevation adjustment, 80 minutes of angle of windage, so you can get this zeroed relatively easy. Zeroing it was easy. It's just like any other normal rifle optic. It was fine. This is not something we're going to be dialing up and down. You're just going to kind of zero it and then make sure you keep it tuned in, but you're going to use the reticle in this optic. The exposed turrets that are extremely low profile have proven to be pretty reliable. I've spilled coffee on this rifle. I don't know how many times, because I do keep it right up in front with me in the truck, and I put my coffee like right above where the rifle is. And man, so it's coffee resistant, if that matters to anybody. It does have little rubber lens caps. I kind of zip tied it on there for a while. It only weighs 7.95 ounces. That, with its extreme low profile footprint, make it highly portable. So you can hand this to a skinny guy and he can run with it all day long. It's going to be very, very, very handy. That's the reason I really like it. Also, being my truck rifle, you jump sometimes very quickly out of the vehicle. You might be in a weird position when you have to take a shot. A lot of times you might have to take a shot on your non-dominant side, and so adjusting the stock at weird angles and stuff like that, you can't have something with too fussy of eye relief. It's nice to have a little more forgiveness there, and this thing really provides that. So the feel of it and the performance, if I was running a blind test and nobody told me how much this thing cost, and I was running this right next to a TA31 Triticon, I would opt for this little MicroPrism. In very short order, I'd make that decision. It's pretty obvious when you get behind it that it performs very well. The glass quality is totally good enough for what you're going to do with it. It works fine in low light. I've used it in the dark. I've used it in the nighttime. I've used it in the rain. I've used it in extreme nasty blizzards. It's tough and it works, and it's something you don't have to worry about as well. Like, you don't have to worry, are you going to break it or are you going to scratch it? It's an optic that's affordable enough to be a tool and to be used on one of your actual go-to rifles that you're actually going to use. I'll tell you, man, I like a lot of different optics for their nostalgic value, for their collector's ability, for how cool they are, whatever. But on something that you're just going to use like every day, man, this thing is hard to beat. If I was going to equip like my entire family with carbines and I wanted them all to have a similar optic so they could communicate with each other very easily, I would go with something probably very close to this, because you're not going to screw it up. You're not going to break it. You're not going to accidentally turn the knobs. You can't really damage anything on this. It's just Such a small, stout little footprint. Very, very, very nice design. Of course, Dimitri did a great job with the reticle as usual. Like, hey, what's the ideal reticle for a 3-power optic in this size? And I knocked it out of the park with the little ACSS reticle. And we'll talk about that real quick. So if you look at the reticle in this optic, you start off with a chevron, again, in the middle, which is that will be illuminated red. If you're using the actual ranging stadia, you do basically bracket the target, and at the base of the chevron, if the target fits in there from shoulder to shoulder, it's at 300 yards. If it's at the first tick mark there, if the shoulder fits inside that horizontal hash mark, it's at 400 yards. The next one is 500, and the last one is 600. And then you do have 5 and 10 mile an hour wind value holdoffs, which is something, again, man, ACSS keeps it simple. You can train anybody on how this thing works in less than 5 minutes, and you don't have to be a ballistics expert. You don't have to know what's going on. Basically, you have to be able to discern and get a feel for the wind and be able to bracket your target, and you're going to be very, very effective all the way out through that kind of sketchy zone where ballistics start to actually throw the shot. And all this stuff being compacted into this tiny little microprism is just ridiculously handy. And so it's like one of my favorite optics I've been testing for a while. I've been chomping at the bit to get out there and kind of share this with you guys. But now that it is more available, I feel like it's a good time to do that. Check it out, man. Look and see. I do believe they are planning, because it is threaded in the front, if I remember correctly, because I keep asking about that. They should be planning to have an ARD attachment in the front. So that will be very cool as well. For a lot of different applications where you get snow, especially moisture, things like that can really be helpful. But it's a well-designed optic. The tool in the toolbox, the reticle, man, you can't beat it. And of course, primary arms, they do such a good job. They're widely available. It's not something you're going to have a hard time tracking down if you need more of them. And I think they definitely get an A+ on this one. Pound for pound, dollar for dollar, this thing is awesome. So check it out. Definitely worth a look.